Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brunch with Brent. I'm Brent Jerva, and joining me today, I'm very excited, is Philip Muller. Philip, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for joining me. Many will know you from your involvement with Manjaro. For those who haven't heard of Manjaro, could you give us like a 1 to 2 sentence introduction to it?
Well, Manjaro is a Linux distribution or an OS where you can have a free operating system with a lot of desktops. So we have the standard XFCE, KDE, and GNOME, and many more in our community edition like Deepin, E3, Mate, and so on.
Sounds like you have all of them.
Mostly, yes, yeah.
Which is no small feat either. It feels like, those are some of the community editions you were mentioning there. And it sounds like there is this really large community around Manjaro that is kind of coming together and making a lot of it happen. I would imagine for you that feels exciting?
Yes, it is exciting because a lot of people are there and we created a tool so everybody can use it and create their own Manjaro edition. So all the official versions are just examples, and the examples are so good that we got some momentum there and everybody is liking them and try to put out their own version of Manjaro, and we don't hinder them to do that.
That's kind of the open source spirit, right? Is here are the tools we used, and do with them what you will. But it sounds like that is kind of exciting for the community as well, because there's whichever desktop you would like to use is definitely available as one example.
Yeah, we have a lot of varieties and some niche stuff like only window managers, and people put even their own new creation on our platform because it's easy to create the base system and then put their own operating system or desktop environment on it. The latest what we have is the Jade desktop, just another desktop by Vitor, and he is our homepage creator. And he said, hey, when I use HTML and web designs, then I create an own version of Manjaro and use only JavaScript and stuff like that. And boom, we have a new. And I think the last version, which is the first alpha version, I did just yesterday load it up, and he posted me back a YouTube video about the newest version of Manjaro, and he laughed at me and asked why. Well, he used the old version 3 years ago from back then and didn't review the new one, so I missed it a little bit.
That's funny. And so if someone wanted to go see that, for instance, where could they go check that out?
Well, they can go to our download page and to the OSDN servers, and it's in the community folder, and it's called Jade.
Perfect.
It's the desktop, but we have it named as WebDad because Jade is trademarked, so we cannot use Jade. So for that reason.
Got it. Yeah, the joys of trademarks. I did skip over sort of how important you are to the Manjaro project. As far as I understand, you co-founded it with a few others back in, something like eight or so years ago. Was it in 2012, 2011?
It was 2011. It was, yes. It was kind of funny because I was back then in a different project. It was called the Chakra project, which was emerged out of the KDE project, which was, again, an addition of just the KDE packages in split version, because back then Arch Linux didn't have those like the Kate in one package and Armor or whatever applications they always were packed in this huge tarbos, and you had always this issue with getting only one application, and we said KDE mod would be that modification, and we created split packages, and it was always the cat and mouse game chasing Arch, because whenever they updated library, we had to repack our packages.
Oh my goodness. And that's quite a bit of work for seemingly nothing, right? Like that was sort of the motivation then?
To create the Chakra project, because we said, okay, we can back then take the package builds and create our own base system. Only the package is what we need. So we did a semi-rolling version, like a solid base system, and put only then our KDE mod packages on our top. and it worked, I think, 3 years. And then the project itself split it up. So one of the female developers created the Chaos project. It was Anke, and I was a little bit not with the team anymore, and I looked for something else. And then there was Roland Singer, and he has this nice installer for Arch called Manjaro. And I said, hey, let's meet up, because I like to see what you guys are up to, because I had a project and it's similar, and maybe we find something better to do a thing which might be last longer as just the installer. And it was really funny because he lived 2 towns away. So I went in my car, drove over to him, and had a cup of coffee with him and talked about it. And he said, yes, let's do it. And so it started. And yeah, there we are.
I think most open source projects don't necessarily start over a cup of coffee, so that actually sounds like a really nice way to go about it. And quite clearly, you both seem to have gotten along. And was it just the two of you who kind of were there in the beginning, or was there a bit of a community surrounding you as well?
No, we had also one who was doing the artist and the theming, creating wallpapers and stuff. And we had a French teacher, Guillaume, who was doing the package manager. So we were 4 people starting it up. And I said, okay, let's do it properly, get 1 year dark, really dark. Nobody know what we're doing. And we established all the base systems. And then out of that, we merged and said, here is the new version of Manjaro, which is not Arch. It's not based on Arch. It is just using the packages, but we have our own servers. And yeah, it's something new, and you can install it easily.
And how does it feel like Manjaro has sort of evolved for you from, that beginning year, for instance, and where it is now?
Well, in the beginning, we only focused on one desktop environment, which was XFCE. And then we started to see, okay, Roland liked to have the GNOME desktop, so he was keen to use that. So we added that as well. And since I had the past with the KDE, I said, okay, beside XFCE, I will also do KDE. And there we had the main editions, and we kept them maintained a couple years ago. So yeah.
And it seems like your team has grown as well. You've got quite a few people on the Teams page now, and I would imagine lots of community contributions.
Exactly. So we have 14 people in the core team and many more as forum moderators. So yeah, a lot of people are joined the project. And now we have this new thing called Manjaro Company. And with that, we will establish the security of the operating system itself. And one of the goals is to employ people out of our community and give them an opportunity to do their hobby as their job, if they want to.
That sounds really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about the motivation behind that?
Well, it was kind of fun. It started with a large donation of some person, and the person came over and asked again and said, hey, let's do it properly. I want to meet you. And then we went over, and this person was Clemens Tönnes, and he said, well, what is needed? And we talked about it, and then in September 19, we signed the contracts, and from there we went with the company.
And so you are currently holding that CEO position, is that right?
Exactly. So I'm one of the CEOs. The second CEO is Bernhard Landauer, who is from Austria. I met him also through the community, and he was back then the community manager. And there was a nice thing called with emails. We got a lot of emails. Hey, you have momentum created, and we want to create a project with you guys with the hardware. And the funny thing was we got one time with Starlabs, which is a UK company, and the second time with Station X. And we went for the second company because the first company didn't have a homepage. And the CEO of Station X was Eddie, and Eddie said, okay, let's meet up in person. And we said, yes, why not? And Bernhard said, okay, let's go to Salzburg. And in Salzburg, he knew someone who owned the Red Bull area with all the airplanes. So we were there on this. And since we did the research and Eddie was a pilot, so he was really keen that we meet on that airplane. And we did a normal tourist tour, and then we went over on the roll field, which is not part of the tourist tour, and went into the garage. And then we showed them how the airplanes get fixed. And it was all this old airplanes with the Spitfire and stuff like that. And our research was really good because his laptop's also called the Spitfire because he was a fanatic of old airplanes, and this gave us the deal. So we went over to London, and he has an office in London in an old building, and also Bletchley Park, the second office, and we went there as well and did some YouTube videos like repairing the Spitfire and stuff like that, doing a little bit tourist tour in the Bletchley Park. Drinking a lot of pints with him, and had really good fun, and released the laptop. The laptop was 1K, and back in 2007, as it was too high, and we didn't sell as many as we thought. So this project died, but we kept the relationship, and yeah. So recently, Eddie telegrammed me and said, "Hey, Philip, I need a laptop. Which Manjaro laptop do you recommend to me?" And said, "Let me check with our vendors which of them is best for you."
And check if there's one that's still called a Spitfire, right?
No, I didn't call it a Spitfire. In Tuxedo laptops, the same laptop called Infinity Book. And then we got the second time written by Starlabs, and we had no time because we went there involved with Tuxedo. And then the third time is a charm. Now Starlabs is also one of our vendors. So if you are interesting and keep pushing us, and we have the right time, then you might get a partnership with Manjaro. So
yeah, it sounds to me like hardware has been a really interesting area lately. I know you've joined us on Linux Unplugged quite a few times in the last several weeks, just talking about some of the updates to hardware that's available there. And I would imagine for the project that probably seems really motivating as well, because not only are you creating software, but hardware that's so nicely paired with it, and you're creating these relationships as well. Does that feel sort of like a nice round way of approaching open source software and hardware for you in the project?
Well, the operating system itself is always free. And if you wanted to gain some revenue out of it or something like that, you have to create projects around it. And having a hardware project might help you to get some traction out. And based on the sales, the company earns a little bit. And also the other companies gain more customers because our community is really large. And each partner we look up have to have the same vibe. So Tuxedo, we met up in a trade show in Chemnitz in north of Germany. And we were actually at the same hotel. And one of my colleagues said, "Hey, there's a Tuxedo car." And he had his magnet stickers, and he plastered the car full of the magnet stickers. We went the next day to our booth, and then some angry person is coming over from Tuxedo and said, "Hey, what the heck? Why you plastered our car with the stickers? How we can take them off?" We said, "Hey, they're magnet sticks. Easy going. Enjoy the simplicity." And it was so funny, and that's how we met them. And a year before, we met Pine 64 in Fosdem, also a trade show where everybody meet there. And one of them, Lucas, got ill, and we said, "Hey, we are a lot of people from Manjaro," and we went there, took over the booth, and plastered again the Pine books. It was then the classic one with the Manjaro sticker. Go to the CEO and gave him a sticker on the t-shirt, and he said, "Hey, it looks good on me," and he put a sticker of him on my t-shirt. So we had Manjaro Pine 64 t-shirts there. From there we go.
The power of stickers.
Yeah.
It sounds like you know how to have a lot of fun around some of these relationships, and why not, right? They don't need to be all serious, but they do lead to some really neat collaborations, it sounds like.
Yeah, you have to be special and to be remembered. So with those little tricks we do there and there, it works out just fine.
It sounds to me like that's maybe something you learned in some of your sales experience, because I know you did sales for quite a while before starting Manjaro. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of part of your history?
Well, I was a sales manager from Conrad Electronics, which is an electronic store in Germany. It has many shops around Germany, in the north, in the south, in the middle of Germany. And I was there a team lead for the telephone department, and later on, additionally, for the computer department. So I always was with hardware and doing contracts, talking a lot of people and figuring out what they want, and always selling them the right things, and selling them additional things as well, because that was the policy of the shop. And there go from selling lamps to telephone, mobile phones, some picture frames nobody uses after Christmas, and everything else around the Fritz boxes, which is routers and computer accessories, parts of computers, laptops, monitors, and so on and so on. Everything what is electronic was my thing. And I used also Linux. And when I got some money for Christmas, they gave us coupons, and we had to use them in the shop. So I bought hardware, and every year my hardware stack goes up and up, and I didn't know what I should put on them. So I choose Linux and did my projects there. So
was that your, like around that timeline, was that your first introduction to really using or getting familiar with Linux?
No, it was pretty early, because my father has a computer shop, and back in the day, I got the parts and I had to build the computer, install the operating system, and do everything. So I had MS-DOS with my games, and then Windows 3.1, XP, Millennium 20,000, and so on. And at some point I said, I don't like Windows anymore, after I coded my application to rip some DVDs to learn English. And it was really fun, because I was coding all the time. And then when my mom got angry and said, hey, dinner is ready, and I didn't hear her, the power was off. So I had to learn how to do backups.
That's one way to learn, isn't it? Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. And based on that, I always bought the DVDs and want to have them collected on my media server. So I had to figure out how to rip them on the hard drive and store them a little bit less compressed, but the same quality. I created a tool which helped me, and it was one of those things. I changed also just doing one application when I do the operating system as well.
So it sounds like almost a natural progression for you from a relatively young age, sort of playing with hardware and software, and that just evolving and evolving and evolving to where you are now, really. Did you ever think you'd be where you are today?
No, actually not. I did a lot of things. I did IT support. I did refurbishing, repairing computers and stuff like that. And in each station of my area of my life, I learned a little bit something new, and all comes together. And now I'm here where I'm doing something totally different than before.
It sounds like those evolutions for you these days are really quite exciting, because you're getting to sort of meet people from all over the world and collaborate with people from all over. And, you know, just our conversation before we hit record here today, you were talking about how you've sort of have your finger on the pulse of some of these sort of hardware companies and the software evolutions that are happening on a daily basis. I would imagine that feels pretty neat and rewarding as well.
Yeah, because if you are on the pulse and develop and see what is going on and going with the flow, then you get emails, for example, from Canonical. So Martin Wimpress wrote me, hey, we have this Snapcraft Summit in Montreal, and it would be keen to have you there. And I said, why not? I can ask around in my team if somebody else wants to join as well. And Wimpy said, yes, why not? If you find some, then tell me, and we'll pay everything and we fly you guys over. but no one had time, so I flew over alone. And the goal was to have snaps integrated in Manjaro, and well, I already had it integrated, and I said, hey, what about making it full compatible, equal to Ubuntu standards? And then I talked with Alan Pope and everybody else there. We had a lot of fun and some pints, went around in Montreal, had dinners, and I was one of the persons who had a tuxedo laptop, so I did a little advocating with the hardware we had, and everybody was amazed about the battery life because I was always on. And even when they got their drinks, I was still hacking because I wanted to have the snaps thing done. And in the end, it was integrated, and Wimpy and Alan was really off the hook what only one developer of Manjaro achieved in this week of Summit.
I'm getting to know some of these really great people around the open source community. Like I did a brunch with Wimpy, with Martin Wimpress, and I also did one with Popey, Alan Pope as well. And what I'm always amazed with, and what I'm hearing from you here, is all of these collaborations that are happening amongst projects to really forward everyone's ambitions. And it feels like we are all getting quite far together, especially when those interactions in person are happening. So kudos to you for sort of making that happen and being willing to work with them as well. I think that's super important.
I think the tribal wars, which is still there, is only at the communities and not at the companies or projects itself. They are always helping each other. So if you see what Pine64 community does, there are several groups trying to get the PinePhone ready, but everybody else has a Telegram chat and everybody is there and help each other. Here's a kernel bug and I fixed it already, take that patch, and then it worked also a new distribution. Other guys do the UI and put other stuffs together. So in the end, everybody's helping, and this is also seen by Canonical and other projects I already met in person. And also Calamaris is one of the installer we use on our end. There is Adrian, and last FOSDEM, I missed him. He was in the same pub, only 2 desks away, and I didn't have the time to change desks because it was interesting discussions on my desk. And last FOSDEM, which was this year, I met him in person and we connected there as well. And yeah, so it's always good to see a person in person, because if you only see an online, then the connection is not as solid. And if you meet them and drink with them, talk with them, chat with them in person, you make a really stronger bond, which is longer lasting, and everybody understands you better as just texting and writing, because lost in translation, stuff like that.
Of course. And I would imagine with so many different languages, people collaborating in different countries, different continents, that sometimes it's nice to meet in person and to share some of those cultural differences too. I know that's some of what happened the last time I was with Wimpy and Popey. We just laugh about all the differences, but that's such a nice way to connect and to then bring those in-person relationships to, the next 4 months of collaborations that you do online and through code and through chat. So that feels, I would imagine, especially important these days, considering many of us can't meet in person, but we will soon. So it sounds like those relationships, those investments that you've made in the past are really paying off.
Yeah, you always have to be keen to keep the connections ongoing, because if you stop them, maybe they will break up. But if you're one of the persons who's always on the buzzer, always following everything, keep in touch with them, then it's good. And they will help you as well and say, hey, we have this new release. Did you test it already out? Or as we mentioned in the summit, you had these and that problems. We already fixed it. Here's the patch. Can you check it, double check it? And if everything is fine, we will give it to the new release. So those kind of collaborations only get established if you have meet them in person or at least did a video chat.
Because I know how you're a bit of a person who looks forward. You were mentioning how you tend to look to the next 5 years and be a little bit maybe visionary, or at least try to place your mind in the future to see what's possible. And I'm just curious if some of those collaborations help you point in the same direction as some other projects, not in a sort of, more in a collaborative way, I suppose.
Well, if you not look into the future or what the future might be, you never change the future, because then why should you change it when everything what is now is perfect for you? And it's always a lack of vision in the future to see what can be done or what might have been done the better way. And we also learn from things we did in the past, and maybe stuff will be more simplified as they are now. And this is one of our things we do at Manjaro. So keep the tools open, keep them easy so everybody else can use them. And if there's a person who said, hey, why not do this? It's much more easier as the things you did in the past, then we will adopt and take the better things. And in the end, it is what it is. The operating system is there, and we want that more people will use it.
And are there some things that you have your eye on in the next 5 years that are kind of exciting you? Some things you maybe are your projects that really kind of get you inspired?
Well, I think the current project which is really inspiring me is the PinePhone. So we have now the opportunity to have a hardware which is open, and everybody can hack on it. It's not restricted like you have an Android base and then you have to put your stuff on top of it. You can really use the hardware as is and use it like a normal PC, and just plug stuff in, get it started, and work with it. And this is the first thing I think will help the whole open source community to get things also in small form factors.
I can remember myself 5 years ago imagining that this should be possible and that we should have this as an option. And at first I was a little disappointed that it took this long, and yet it's still so exciting, and it feels like there's some real momentum and lots of collaborations with different projects making it happen. So I could see why, quite a bit of effort is going into it, because it's a game changer that we really need. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, especially because the things are now, everybody is starting to track you. And if you have a Linux phone, this is not happening because you are the king of the software as well, and don't have to relate on big companies. And you can verify everything what's happened on the devices. And having the network with all the projects, one project is better to do applications, the other project is better to do the base UI, and other projects doing better with the base system like kernel and libraries and stuff like that. And if you put everything together, then you have this Linux phone which is working, and only small things, the distributions change will make it attracted to the community. But overall, you use the same base.
I'm not a developer, but I'm certainly a deep user, and it excites me to no end to know the possibilities that might come in the next 5 years around these kind of projects.
Yeah, but you don't have to be a developer. You can also join projects like you just translating stuff, or what you do talking about the Linux community or about the trend is coming on, or you want to translate stuff. So there is no need to be the developer itself. It's only one part of the community, and there are a lot of other things you can do to help open source. Even if you're a singer or just an artist and provide a wallpaper, same thing.
I'm so glad you said that. And it's a theme that comes up relatively often during these conversations, is that yes, the developers are great, but so too are the designers, and so too are the translators, and so too are the community managers, and so too are all of the people who kind of collaborate to make this big open source city that we have run as it does. So thank you for mentioning that again. I think that's super important.
You can't be the expert on everything, so you have to have experts around you to help you to be the collective mind, and then you can fight against Goliath.
You did mention a little bit of privacy stuff earlier around the phone. I'm curious about where that sits for you. It's certainly a topic that I feel quite deeply about, but I don't find necessarily comes up as often as it should. Can you give me a sense of sort of what motivates you there? And also, I know it may be a little bit of a difference in Europe versus North America, just culturally around how important privacy feels?
Well, I think the stickers on the webcam on your laptop is a common thing all over the world. And it's good to see that open source hardware have those kill switches. For the PinePhone, you have to open up the battery pack, and under there you have some switches. And those you find also on the PinePhone, on PineBook. And when we delivered the PineBook Pro, we forgot to deactivate the kill switch for the VLAN. So everybody has to activate the Wi-Fi to get Wi-Fi.
Right.
No, we wanted to be secure, so
that's a sort of teaching mistake, but it forces, I guess, an education around that.
We figured it out pretty well because some users posted, "Hey, there is no Wi-Fi," and we said, "Yeah." We tested it, also no Wi-Fi. Okay, and then Pine64 and us posted, "Hey, you have to do this switch and this keyboard combination, and then you have Wi-Fi."
So that's on the hardware side of things, but how does it touch you sort of on the data side of things and, all the services that are being offered these days and just sort of hoovering up all of this personal stuff? How does that sit with you, and where do you feel like we should be going?
It always depends how collective you are with your own data. Some people say, "Hey, it doesn't matter if the government or companies earn money with my data." Others say, "I no data at all because I'm a private person. Why should my data be free for everybody when I browse the net?" So that's why Linux creates some projects like the P-hole with a Raspberry Pi, which will direct everything to DevNull. And then Amazon and Google can search DevNull for all the data, which is there not anymore.
They'll find quite a lot in there, I think.
If we have an open source operating system, you can decide yourself how far you want to give your data away or not. And this is not given with Android and Apple phones anymore.
I hope there's a day in the near future where that's the default for most people, but I'm unfortunately a little skeptical and not convinced. But I sure am glad we're headed that way, at least for some of our devices.
Well, the phone, I don't think it will be soon the one and only phone you have to use. If you have online banking, you might need still an Android phone because the banks is really complicated to get them on board on a Linux phone. So, of course, you have to have a standard. That's why Canonical is trying to get Snaps out there, and Fedora over GNOME wants to spit out the Flatpak. So we have two systems, and we will see if both of them have good ways. And if we see some banking applications either on Flatpak or Snaps, then maybe.
That's fascinating to me. I had never realized that was a problem that some of these package standards could solve. But of course, it makes it easier for the banks to sort of roll out that software in one place. And hopefully it can be fairly smooth and fairly quickly. But just occurred to me, thank you for sharing how that's just an example of some of the problems that we are trying to deal with. And everybody, most of us are doing some banking, right? So these are the hurdles we have to go over.
Yeah, you can create a lot of applications like a video player, audio player, and stuff like that. But if you have a key application, which is banking, you have a hurdle and you have to take that hurdle. And if you say, okay, Linux distributions, how many are there? 200? And there is no standard, then the bank director says, what the heck is Linux? Doesn't work. And if you say there is 2 versions and there are companies behind them and they help you to get your application even packaged for that, and if you get involved and collaborate with them, then you get the software in it, and that's how it goes. But you have to have persons out there talking to them and say, hey, this software would be nice to have on Linux over. And I really don't understand why people hate snaps and flatpak so much, because there are so many distributions and we need a standard, and the standard in Linux is not given yet.
It sounds a little bit like I'm hearing your sales voice there again. Going to see some of these companies and creating collaborations is a sales process. I know it might not be a monetary one, but it's a really important one to build those relationships and build that trust moving forward so that we can make this possible. So I really appreciate that perspective.
Exactly, yeah.
One question I have for you that's come to mind for me in the last week is around development specifically, and how open source is a combination of so many different types of development. But I'm interested in your perspective on paid developers who work on open source versus unpaid developers. And do you have a sense of sort of where that is, where the trouble is with that, where you'd like it to be, how to make it sustainable, etc.? It just feels like one of those things that we need to make sure exists. And so how do we take care of everyone?
Well, if you start in Linux, around this Linux open source platform, you have the problem that operating systems and stuff you cannot sell. So you have to have something around it, or you have some supporters which say, hey, I support you what you're doing. If you concentrate on the operating system because I'm using it, then I pay you the money for that. And based on that, we can go on and make this company and employ people. So that's how we do it on our end. And sure, community developers are given, and they do it in the spare time. And some of them do that for fun because that's a hobby and it will still be the hobby. And others say, okay, if there's opportunity to make the hobby a real job, then why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope we can all sort of support those who do such good work. I think that's really important. Philip, if there was something that you'd like to ask of the community, something you'd like them to go see, experience, maybe something you'd like them to think about, what would you put out there?
Well, if you're interested in open source, then look not at the big projects like KDE and GNOME and all the out there. There are little projects as well, which might help you to understand how open source works, because less people, less problems. And if you see a bug tracker in GitHub and you have a solution for it, simply provide a patch and merge request. And with that, you can get you started as a open source developer. And if you have the opportunity to join a company out of that, then you will be a paid developer doing open source. So many ways. And little projects like XFCE and others which are in need of developers will thank you to join them.
Start small and grow. Sounds like a nice trajectory. If people wanted to get in contact with you, where would they reach you?
Or they can write me an email, go to the forums, ping me there, write me a PM. Look at me at Telegram. I have many ways to contact me.
Great, and we'll certainly link to those. Philip, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and I definitely learned a lot, so thank you.
You're welcome, no problem.